Okay, let's start by having a look at the notes on a piano keyboard. The white notes are named A through to G, and these are known as the natural notes in Western music. And the pattern of notes A to G is repeated across the keyboard. As I'm using a C harmonica in all the examples here, I'm going to focus in on one section of the keyboard beginning and ending on the note C. The C to the right is the same note, but is higher in pitch. Now let's add the names for the black piano keys. These notes are known as the accidentals, or sharps or flats. These 5 notes have 2 names and can be referred to either as sharp, meaning higher than, or flat, meaning lower than. So for example, the note between C and D can either be referred to as C sharp, the note higher than C, or D flat, the note lower than D. Generally, blues musicians and harmonica players in particular tend to refer to these notes as flats. So now we have all 12 notes that are available to us in Western music. So we've said goodbye to the keyboard and I've placed these notes in ascending order, beginning on the note C and ending on the next C higher up in pitch. This gives us what we refer to as a chromatic scale, and in this case it's a chromatic scale in the key of C. In actual fact, if you start this sequence of 12 notes on any note and end it on the next note of the same name higher up, you get a chromatic scale. So for example, if I started on D and ended on D, I'd have a chromatic scale in the key of D. Similarly, start on G and end on the next G, a chromatic scale in the key of G. All other scales in Western music, including the blues scale, are made up from a selection of these notes from the chromatic scale. Before we carry on, it's worth clearing up some terminology in terms of how we refer to the distances between notes in the chromatic scale, because this terminology gets used quite a lot. The distance between any 2 adjacent notes in the chromatic scale is referred to as a semitone. This can also sometimes be known as a half step. So logically, 2 semitones make a whole tone, or a whole step. And finally, the distance between any one note and the next note of the same name that is higher in pitch is known as an octave. You have a total of 3 octaves on your diatonic harmonica. The notes from 1 whole blow to 4 whole blow, 4 whole blow to 7 whole blow, and 7 whole blow to 10 whole blow. Now earlier I said that all musical scales are formed by choosing a pattern of notes from the chromatic scale. Here, for example, is the major scale pattern. Notice that the major scale in the key of C uses only the natural notes, so there are no flats or sharp notes in the C major scale. All other major scales use at least 1 flat or sharp. Now let's have a look at the blues scale pattern. Here's the blues scale in the key of C. If we now resequence these 12 notes beginning and ending in G, so we get a G chromatic scale, and apply the blues scale pattern, we get the following notes for a blues scale in G. And now let's do the same, but beginning the scale and ending it on D, for a blues scale in D. So we have the blues scales in the key of C, G and D, and these keys represent the first 3 positions of the harmonica, or a harmonica in the key of C. So if you're playing in first position on a key of C harmonica, you're playing in the key of C. Second position, you're playing in the key of G, and third position on a key of C harmonica, you're playing in the key of D. As you can see from the chart, by starting from a different note and following the blues scale pattern, we end up with a different set of notes in the scale. However, the blues scale in any key will always sound similar because of the musical distances or intervals between the notes, following the same pattern. Now, because all the notes are different, remembering which notes appear in the scale in which key can be pretty hard. So the important thing is the position of notes relative to each other. To make it simpler, musicians have a way of referring to each note in the scale. There are actually several ways, but most musicians in popular music use a system of Roman numerals. So the notes of the major scale are given the Roman numerals 1 through to 7. So 1 through to 7 for the natural notes. And the notes that fall in between these major scale notes are referred to using either their flat or sharp names. For simplicity, I'm just going to stick with flats. So the note in between the 1 and the 2 is called the flat 2. The note in between the 2 and the 3, the flat third, and so on. So the blues scale retains some of the notes from the major scale, but importantly adds 3 new notes. I've highlighted these in yellow on the chart. These are the flat third, also known as the minor third, since it appears in the minor scale, the flat fifth, and the flat seventh, which is also referred to as minor seventh, as it also appears in the scale. These notes are what gives the blues scale its bluesy, mournful sound, and so they're referred to as the blue notes. So with a harmonica in the key of C, let's take the first position blues scale, i.e. the blues scale in C, and have a look where the blue notes, that flat third, flat fifth, flat seventh, where those notes appear on the harmonica, where they're available, because that's what's going to make our playing sound more bluesy. So as you can see, in first position, the blue notes can only be obtained through bending and overblows. Now let's look at how the scale can be played in each octave of the harmonica, starting at hole 1. In the lower octave, almost the entire first position scale is available through bending. The one missing note is the flat third, which is E flat in this case. This note can be obtained through overblowing the hole 1, but very few people can play it, and fewer still can make use of it in a musical context. So it tends to be swapped out for the 2-hole blow. This doesn't sound as bluesy, it's not quite the whole blues scale, but it sounds good enough. So the notes to play are the 1-hole blow, 2-hole blow, 2-hole draw whole tone bend, 2-hole draw semitone bend, 2-hole draw, 3-hole draw, semitone bend, 4-hole blow, and it should sound something like this. And if you're wondering what it sounds like with the 1-hole overblow, I'll give it a go now. Not so good, but just about did it. Now in the middle octave, the blue notes are only available using overblows. So this is pretty tricky stuff and out of the reach of many players. So this is consequently why in first position people tend to play only down the lower octave of the harp, or as we'll see in a minute, the upper octave. So in first position in the upper octave, the entire blues scale is available through bending. And this explains why first position blues is often characterized by this high-end harmonica, the Jimmy Reed style playing. The middle octave is pretty much avoided by all but the most technically proficient players. Moving on to second position, which is key of G on a C harmonica, the blue notes of our G blues scale are B flat, D flat, and F. So now let's take a look where these are available on our harmonica. So in second position, the blue notes are more widely available across the harmonica, especially throughout the first 6 holes, where an entire blues scale in the key of G is available. The scale begins on 2-hole draw, or you could begin it on 3-hole blow. They're both the note G, first note of the scale, followed by 3-hole draw semitone bend, followed by 4-hole blow, 4-hole draw semitone bend, 4-hole draw, 5-hole draw, 6-hole blow, and it sounds like this. Now you can also play the scale lower down the harmonica using those the hole 1 and hole 2, because the blue notes are also down there. So if we begin the scale as before on 2-hole draw, moving up to 3-hole draw semitone bend, then down to the 1 blow, 1-hole draw semitone bend, 1-hole draw, 2-hole draw whole tone bend, and back to the 2 draw, you get a scale that sounds something like this. And then this scale can be combined with the first scale we did, starting again from 2 draw, to create a full blues scale from hole 1 up to hole 6. So if I start from hole 1, so turning to the upper end of the harp, the entire blues scale can only be played using overblows or overdraws. Although the flat 7th, the F in this case, is available as 9 draw, the blue notes of flat 3rd and flat 5th are rather tricky to obtain. So this is one reason why many players in second position tend to stick to the first 6 holes. They don't venture up into that high end of the harmonica. However, there are other scales that we can bring in to make that part of the harmonica more accessible in second position, such as the major scale or the major pentatonic scale, but those are for another day. Finally, in second position, right at the very top end, you have got the flat 3rd on the 10-hole blow whole tone bend. So you can play a little bluesy riff right at the top by bending the whole 10 down from the C to the B flat and then moving across to the 9-hole blow, so C, B flat, then G. So to this point, using our C harmonica, we've had a look at first position, key of C, and second position, key of G, and where the important notes for blues appear on the harmonica, which is the flat 3rd, the flat 5th, and the flat 7th, which are the blue notes of the blues scale. In first position, we've seen that those notes tend to be centered either at the bottom end of the harmonica or at the top end of the harmonica, but are pretty difficult to get in the middle of the harmonica because they need overblows to play them. And that's why you tend to find that first position playing is characterized by those high-end blow bends, such as Jimmy Reed, or the low-end bending, and not really a lot of playing in the middle of the harmonica for first position. And second position blues, we see that most of those blue notes are centered around the first 6 holes of the harmonica and are then scarce or hard to get at the top end of the harmonica. So second position blues does tend to focus quite heavily on those early holes. Now, good players will also be able to play up at the high end in second position quite happily, but they'll be using notes from other scales such as the major pentatonic or even the major scale. Now, let's have a look at third position. So, starting our chromatic scale on D and ending on D, we see the pattern of notes gives us the flat third as F, the flat fifth as A flat, and the flat seventh as C. So now let's have a look at where those notes appear on our C harmonica. So as you can see, the blue notes in third position are widely available across the harmonica. So our flat 7, the C, is available as below notes on the 1 hole, 4 hole, 7 hole and 10 hole. The flat third, the F, is available as a draw note on the 5 hole draw and 9 hole draw, and then as the 2 hole draw whole tone bend. And then finally the flat 5 is available as the 3 hole draw tone and a half bend and the 6 hole draw semitone bend. It's also available up on the 9 overblow, or sorry, 9 overdraw, but that's pretty tricky to get, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. So as you can see from this, when compared to the first position and second position, the third position actually is well suited to playing blues. So in the lower octave of the harmonica, a full blues scale is available in third position, beginning on 1 hole draw, and it sounds something like this. Moving to the middle octave, you can see a full blues scale is also available here. And this time, pretty much all the notes, bar 1, are available without bending. The only exception is the 6 hole draw semitone bend to get to that A flat. The blues scale starting on 4 hole draw sounds like this. And finally, the upper octave. So whilst all the notes of the blues scale aren't available here, you still have the flat 7th and the flat 3rd as part of the scale. Beginning on 8 draw, it sounds like this. And there's a missing note at the end.